You're welcome along to the football show. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by the Brighton manager, Graham Potter. How are you keeping, Graham?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thanks a lot for talking to us. It's a busy time, a pre-season like no other, and also right in the middle of the transfer window. I've been looking at some gossip columns, and it turns out, Graham, you got too many good centre halves. Is this a time of the year you enjoy, the sort of football manager time of the year, the wheeling and dealing, or do you like to leave all that to somebody else?
No, my role's the head coach, so that gives you a clue. I think thankfully we've got a good club, with a leadership above me in terms of Dan Ashworth and Tony Bloom and Paul Barber, and there's a recruitment team, and there's other people involved in that. So I don't have to waste time speaking with agents and clubs and negotiating things. I can work with the group that we have and try to help them improve and develop the team.
Your background is obviously interesting in that you had a good, successful football career, played at a good level for a decade, but then you go off, you educate yourself, you go to Sweden, have this brilliant success with Östersunds. Everyone knows a lower tier team, bring them to the top flight, bring them to the Europa League, these memorable victories over Galatasaray. You win at the Emirates. So there's a lot there in the background. What is the part of being a football manager then that you most enjoy, of being that head coach? What is the part that really gets you out of bed every morning?
I think it's the bit about helping players improve, taking players from one level and trying to get them to the next, making a difference in somebody's life. I think that's fundamentally what I started out to try to think about doing, and then it was about trying to educate myself or prepare myself or do as well as I can to make sure I can do that. Understand about how an environment can help and try to create that place where people feel, comfortable. They feel that they can be part of something. They feel that they're improving. That's what I started on this path for. And of course, you need football results as well to keep you in the job and to keep that journey going. But for me, the most important thing is the process behind how you get the results and working with people.
Is it difficult to keep on that track within that process when you talk about results? Because particularly when you're in the Premier League and maybe it's an old school attitude, but the attitude is still there. Results are everything. So it's all very well saying you want to help players progress, you want to make them better individuals. If you're not getting the results on a Saturday, nobody really cares about the other stuff. Is that difficult for you personally when you're thinking about what you want to achieve as a person and as a coach? Is it hard to remember those philosophies when it is so results driven?
I think you have to acknowledge it's a challenge because that's the bubble we're in. Mm-hmm. And as you go higher, the noise becomes louder. But fundamentally, if you just focus on results and you neglect the people, then there's no guarantees that you're going to get the results that you're going to keep in the job. So you lose twice. So ultimately, I think you've got to understand that, of course, you need results. You need to get points. We're in a competition. And if you don't get those, then like you say, you can talk all you want about development. You're not going to stay there very long. But at the same time, I think you have to build teams. You have to make a difference to the people that you're working with. You have to build relationships. You have to get them on side. You have to have something a bit deeper than a football result, because football, you can do everything and you can still lose. So, and especially if you're Brighton in the Premier League, it's not so simple. It's not so easy. Teams have good players and good coaches, and the competition is fierce. So, and just as a human being, if you're just hanging on to a football result to get your satisfaction in life, then I think it's a short-lived experience.
I'd imagine in your years as a pro, you saw a lot of people and worked under a lot of people who were like that, though, whose entire mood for the week probably was dictated by what happened on the Saturday afternoon. You don't need to name names, but was it almost seeing those individuals and how their life was that you wanted to steer away from that?
To a certain extent, yeah, I think so. I mean, that's why football is so brilliant. It's so because it's so hard to get results. It's so hard to win. It's the margins are so small that that sometimes you can do a lot of things well and lose, and sometimes you can do things wrong and win. And that's the beauty of the game. And the key thing is not to think that you're so good if you win, and to not to beat yourself up so much if you don't win. To try to keep as level as you can and think about, okay, how can I improve the players? How can I improve the team? Because ultimately, if you can stay consistent with that, you might be able to ride out the challenges of the variance of football.
I mentioned your education, and people will be aware, and a lot's been made of the masters you did in leadership and in emotional intelligence. And I guess in pretty much any line of work, that would be seen as such a positive thing. Football is a very weird profession, though, that so much of it is still quite old school. And when you talk about that and you bring that up, I find the conversation around it often is almost one of, yeah, but again, it's all about tactics. It's all about buying the right players. That's not really what football is about. Have you found much resistance and to your views on the game and your views on developing people, which maybe have changed a lot within football over the last 10, 20 years? Has it been different, your experience in Sweden and then coming over to England and Wales first with Swansea, but then moving into the Premier League? How have you found people's attitudes to that more wholesome view of what a football club should be?
Well, I don't really interest myself too much with what people from the outside say, because they don't really know. They've got this opinion of how football is and what's important. Most of them have never been in that situation to have an opinion. So I don't really care too much about that. I think you're right, though. I mean, football is ultimately it's about players. It's about a team understanding how they're playing. But many managers have been sacked because they've, in inverted commas, lost the dressing room. And so, a football team is ultimately a collection of people. It's a group. And if you don't understand about how to work with a group or have relationships within the group, you best make sure that you've got some really good players, because you might lose some football matches. Because if people don't want to try for each other, if they don't want to fight for each other, if they don't want to play for the team, then you can have problems.
We had Neil Lennon on the show last week, and he was on with Stilian Petrov and Chris Sutton, and they were talking and telling stories of that great Celtic team under Martin O'Neill and the type of characters that were in that dressing room and the type of manager Martin O'Neill was and what he let them away with in many ways. And Lennon was comparing it to the current Celtic side now he has to manage, and it's more trying to cajole the players rather than cornering the players. Is it just we have a different way of talking about it now than, say, when you were a player as to how managers interact? Or is the dressing room actually a totally different place from 10, 20 years ago?
I think, yeah, because society's changed. I would say it has changed, but I think fundamentally it's still the same. And the managers, the Martin O'Neill, for example, I was with Martin at Wickham for a short period, and he understood about people, understood about the group, understood about the dynamic as much as anybody. So I think it will always remain. Football is still a game. Two goals, two teams, 11v11, and you've got to work out the best team that understands each other. It helps if you've got the better players, but also there's plenty of I suppose stories or examples of teams that maybe haven't got the most quality or haven't got their best players, but have got something we call a team spirit or some attitude that is there that means that they can work together and they can be better than the individuals in the team. And I think that's actually important, and I don't think we'll ever go away from that in football.
There was obviously, when you got the job a year ago, a lot of talk around the change of philosophy on the pitch as well, and the stats bear that out. More passes, more possession. I don't want to say your appointment was seen as something of a risk, but they obviously went from a very experienced manager in Chris Hughton, a very pragmatic manager, and I know you're certainly not the type that would ever speak down of anybody else or any of your predecessors. It seemed, again, from the outside that maybe it was to do with an attitude that Brighton, be happy with survival, lads. Don't be having notions about yourself that you can play a different style of football. Did you find any of that resistance inside the club? Because they'd obviously had success. They'd been promoted, become a solid Premier League side, playing a certain type of football. How much did you have to go about winning over the players as to what you wanted to do?
Well, I think you're right. I took over a team that had success in terms of promote. Chris had done a great job at Brighton in terms of promotion and then staying in the league. So a tremendous football person. So there was a lot of respect for Chris in the at Brighton amongst the players and amongst the staff. And my job was to try to build on that, really, to try to use it and to try to then see, okay, where can I take this? And I think that's always the challenge. You can't go too quickly. You can't just go just because I have a feeling that I want to do this. I have to always respect the players, respect where it's come from, and try to move it towards a direction that you think is right for us. As I've said before, in football, there's no right or wrongs. There's no style that's better or worse than anybody else's. It's just we all have to make our choices, and the important thing I think it was always is to be respectful for what's been here before. Because, like I said, Chris has done a great job, and then as in any coach, any year you have to try to improve on that, and that was the job. And I'm lucky that because Chris had done such a good job, he left a good group of players, a good environment, a good good professionals that wanted to try, were open-minded, and yeah, we've had our bumps, of course, and it's not straightforward, but we've made a start at where we want to try to get to.
How would you describe the Graham Potter style of football?
Yeah, I think I would like to think that it's a balanced style. That I think a lot of people sort of try to pigeonhole you into certain things and make easy labelling, but always I look at a balance between defence and attack. I don't think you can do what we've done in terms of Europa League and Swedish football without having that understanding of that. But fundamentally, you want to try and understand what the players can do, because there's no point saying as a coach, I want to do this, this and this, but the players aren't able to do it, or it's not necessarily playing to their strengths. You want players to be themselves on the pitch and then try and adapt. I mean, yeah, so that's what I would say. I would hope it was balanced, and I'd hope that it takes into consideration the players' qualities.
Yeah, because we are all guilty of pigeonholing managers. And again, there'd be a sense of, well, free-flowing, attacking football would mean that defensively there's got to be something lacking. You can't have that balance. Whereas actually you look at the statistics from Brighton again, even though I think even been over Brighton a few times during the season, talking to supporters, they were very much enjoying a more possession-based game. We didn't concede any more goals.
No, I think that's always the foundation was perceived to be defensive, previously under Chris. So you know what it's like if you try, like I said before, if you try to change something too quickly, you can actually try to develop a playing style one way and then open up holes in somewhere else. So it's about doing it at the right times and with the players on board. That's what we try to do. That's the big challenge, because in the Premier League, again, results aren't so easy to get. And if you want to change something and you want to convince people, then winning football matches, as we've discussed earlier, is the best way to do it. But we're at the sharp end of football, and we're at the toughest competition in the world. So that brings its a clear challenge.
It does feel actually that the conversation around Brighton last summer is very similar to the conversation we've had around Irish football in recent times, and that from the outside you would look, and Martin O'Neill and Giovanni Trapattoni got Ireland 2 major finals, yet there was always an underlying sense from the supporters that they wanted more. They wanted a more possession-based football, that the likes of Armenia or Georgia might come to Dublin and dominate possession, and that's not what we wanted football in this country to be about. And now Stephen Kenny is coming in, who I think... well, obviously, you're going to get to know now with the Irish players that are at the club, but you might have gone up against Dundalk in some pre-season friendlies before, that he has a philosophy probably not that dissimilar to you as well. And there's a time and a place when people are ready for it. And maybe last summer was the time and the place that Brighton, having had the pragmatic, having had the success and having cemented their place in the Premier League team, they were ready just for that little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really comment on why they wanted to make the change. Clubs, I suppose, are entitled to make those decisions. And then once the opportunity came, it was a good one for me. I think you have to just be careful. You as much as I don't necessarily think it's about my philosophy or the coach's philosophy. The most important thing is to understand the players you've got at your disposal, and how best to get the best out of them, and play a type of football that people recognise. If you don't get results, it doesn't matter what style you play. If you don't get results, people will pull at it and they'll be critical of it. So you might talk about a possession-based style, or you might talk about more attacking style. But if you lose the first 4-5 matches, then there'll be enough criticism out there we all understand that. So the key thing is to understand the players, and then to try to work as closely to that as you can.
Talking of the Irish players, then actually I mentioned that Neil Lennon was on the show last week. He said they'd made tentative inquiries for Shane Duffy. Give us the big exclusive. That's what I need to leave here with. And any update on Shane Duffy at all? Can you tell us anything?
No, nothing. He trained today with us. Trained hard. Trained well. We're having a pool and a darts competition tonight. There's a bit of team building, so I imagine he'll be one of the favourites for that. He's a fantastic guy, fantastic lad. I've got an amazing relationship with him, and he's a Brighton player. So we're happy with that.
You must be incredibly happy with the depth you have at centre half. There's obviously a lot of speculation about Ben White as well. You've got 6 or 7 players there. As a manager, it is a difficult position, I guess. You talk about Shane Duffy and the character, and he's such a big presence, you feel, around Brighton, that you got to look long term as well as can you keep 6 or 7 centre halves happy, even if you decide to go and play 3 at the back. So do you have some big decisions to make over the next week or so?
Yeah, I think there will be. I think you always have to understand that as much as we want to try and build our own team, you have to respect the individual as well, their careers. There'll be times where players will think, okay, maybe I need to move and play a bit more football, or maybe a decision comes from outside. There's things that happen in football while the windows are open. That's what happens. We're happy with the group we've got. We're happy with the dynamic at the moment. We want to try and improve from last year, and you need good players to do that. And Shane certainly is a good player.
You've got 2 good young Irish players with you as well. Aaron Connolly obviously was a bit of a revelation at times last season, particularly those 2 goals against Tottenham. When you talk about your relationship with players and helping them develop, can you talk to us about Aaron Connolly then, and maybe even after that Tottenham game, because he's a very young guy. He's just scored on the biggest stage, and I guess you want him to take a lot of confidence from that sort of performance, but at the same time you don't want to get too cocky about things. You don't want to think you've made it from that. What's your relationship been like with him? What have you been trying to get out of him over the last few months?
It's been really good. I've really enjoyed working with Aaron. He's got some qualities that are at a really high level. He runs behind, affects the back line, and he can score goals. And he's only young. So he's had a career where he's just scored, and he's had that knack, which is a nice knack to have. And pretty quickly in pre-season, you realise when he's playing against the likes of Shane Duffy, or he's playing against the likes of Lewis Dunk, or he's playing against the likes of Adam Webster, that he's causing them a problem. And you think, well, if he's causing them a problem, he can cause other teams a problem. At the same time, he's still learning the game, and he's still learning how to be a professional footballer at the Premier League level. And it's natural, really. You score and you make your debut, and you score 2 goals, and you think maybe this is quite, it's a bit easier than what the reality of it is. And like anything, he's a young player that will go through ups and downs. He'll have bad moments, which he's had, and we've got to be there to help him and support him and to get him through those moments, and to understand what it takes to be a Premier League footballer, to be an international footballer. It's not about what you do in the first 5 matches. You've got to try to build a career that you're around for 10, 15 years, and that's the work that we've been trying to do with him. He's fundamentally a good lad. But he's got a lot to do as well. But he's got an exciting future.
Yeah, he certainly does. And as you say, there were tough times, because those 2 goals, they come on national TV. He gets thrown into the international side on a tough night with the international side, and he has to wait a long time for the next goal to come around. Yeah. Is he one of those characters that is just naturally positive and doesn't let him affect him, or is he just like the rest of us, and actually sometimes it gets on top of him, and you had to do a bit of work in terms of making sure that not the opposite of getting too cocky, but actually realise, you are 19, 20. This might take a little bit of time.
Yeah, he's a human being at the end of the day, and he hadn't scored for a while. He's going to feel that he isn't doing as well as he thinks he should, and all that all that talk, which can be not so helpful. You have to try again to try and help him with perspective. This is his first season. He's contributed to wins. He's contributed to team performances when he's played, even when he hasn't scored. He's played his role in for us as a team, and it's also part of his development that he has to understand as well. Is you can't expect that every game you're going to turn on the pitch, score goals, and play well in the Premier League as a forward. That would be unfair of us to put that expectation on him, and it's unfair of him to put that expectation on himself. But that's all part of the process because he's so desperate to do well. He's so desperate to play for Brighton, to play for his country and score goals. And so you have to find the balance between perspective and his own ambition.
Similar situation, I'd imagine, then with Jason Molumby, who went out on loan, different scenario, and played a lot of games at a young age. Just in terms of what he did last season out on loan then, Millwall, do you get much of an opportunity to see what he's doing, or are you relying on your backroom staff to feed back?
Probably a bit of both, I would say. I mean, a lot of the games, his games were televised, so we got to see those games. And yeah, the way the world is now, you can access every game pretty much. And so we've kept a close eye on Jason. He's had a really good experience at Millwall, had a good year last year. He's coming to pre-season with us now, look really good. And again, he's got the right attitude, the right personality, desperate to be a footballer, desperate to play. And we have to try and help him with the next steps of his career, and that's the challenge for us.
Yeah, that is a big challenge as well, I guess, when you are at that top elite level, because you look at your midfielders, Davy Proper, Dale Stevens, Yves Bissouma. These are men who have been around the block, who are real quality players who've done little or nothing wrong. And while you want to help Jason Molumby along, there may not be a huge amount of game time there, and he may need to grab his chances. Do you see him being at Brighton this season, or is there a chance he goes back out on loan, or what's the plan?
I think we're going to take as long as we can to get to know each other more before we make that decision, because it's a big decision for him. He's keen to play and he's keen to carry on that development that he's had. But I would also argue that at the start of the season, Aaron Connolly had Glenn Murray and Florian Andone and Jurgen Locadia, ahead of him. So, or certainly, first team footballers, and we made a pathway for him and a space for him. But at the same time, when you're playing young players, they're not consistent. They're a bit up and down, and as a coach, you have to shoulder that as well. So it's a bit of a balance always, as we spoke about earlier. But I like Jason a lot. I like his personality. I like his football attributes. And like I said, he's desperate to play football and learn and improve. And as a coach, it's nice to work with those players. At the same time, as we said before, you've got to respect their careers and respect that they want to carry on developing and moving forward.
How do you know when they're ready at that young age? How did you know Aaron Connolly was ready for that step up?
Well, I wouldn't say that I knew that he was ready. I just thought that he had some attributes that could be really helpful and useful in the Premier League. So I thought that he could run in behind defenders, and I thought that he could score. He's still got lots of things to learn, and I guess that's the challenge with Premier League and young players. It's helping them learn their trade at that level. It's not so easy because the pressure and the external noise and all that sort of stuff, and the competition itself isn't so easy. But you never know is the answer. But at the same time, what you do know is that they'll try their best. They'll give everything, and then your job is to try to help them through that process. And at the same time, make sure the team gets enough results that, back to our conversation earlier, that you can keep your 3 points, or you keep enough points that can keep you in the job. Because fundamentally, back to philosophies, if you played Aaron Connolly or you're playing Jason Molumby, but you've lost a few games, there'll be some guy in Ireland going, "Hey, Potter needs to get the sack." Despite the fact that you're playing young players from Ireland, it's that's how it is.
Yeah. Well, here, put them in first and we'll worry about that later on, all right? That's the main thing.
Exactly.
It is an unusual scenario, of course, that they could well be playing international football before they're back at Brighton, which is another thing to throw into the mix. Have you had many conversations with Stephen Kenny, or is that just not something that really happens?
No, I'm pretty sure we will over the next days, because those guys are going to be close to the thinking. I'm pretty sure. So we want to help them, and I think the closer you get to the relationship, the better, because we've got information for them, and we want to help them do well, because it's in everybody's interest for them to go to the countries and play well. Nobody would be happier than me, because it's a great experience for them and a huge honour. And again, back to what I said before, it'll make a difference to their lives and their careers.
One last question, because you've been very good with your time. I mentioned your playing career, and you played in the Premier League with Southampton. I think it was 8 appearances.
I think two of those were. You were quite generous with referring to me as a good player, but
no.
You're trying to butter me up there.
If you played in the Premier
League,
weirdly though, 2 of the games you played in were 2 of the most famous Premier League games that have ever been, which were Southampton's 6-3 win over Manchester United, where I think you came off the bench. But you started the day that Ali Dia, George Weah's imaginary cousin, who somehow managed to trick Graham Souness, started that game. You were playing for Southampton that afternoon. Have you any memories of Ali Dia and that whole situation?
Well, yeah, I've been asked this a few times actually. I remember him coming and being somebody's relation. Yeah, and the lads weren't so sure when he was in training, and he ended up playing. But sometimes when you're a player, you just focus on yourself. And I was trying to establish myself in the team, and I was just, like I said, I was worried so much for myself, or trying to get myself up to the level and be a Premier League player. And I didn't take too much notice, but I certainly remember the boys weren't convinced at the time. But then probably when they were speaking about me, they weren't convinced about me either.
You were just delighted he took the attention.
Yeah, exactly. I took the pressure off myself. To be fair, I was delighted. I stayed on the pitch, and I think they brought him off.
Graham, it's been brilliant to talk to you. Thanks.
Me or him?
Yeah. Well, luckily, things have gone slightly differently for the two of you since then. You've been great with your time. I know you're in the middle of pre-season up in Scotland at the moment. And as I say, there's a huge Irish interest in what happens at Brighton this season. So we'll be keeping a very close eye. Thanks for talking to us.
Oh, no problem. Good luck.